All right, I thought I would talk about Fargo season 5. I guess I've decided that this is a show I want to keep talking about. This and Reacher right now, I think more than any other shows, because I have such a fondness for season 1 of Reacher and for the first 3 seasons of Fargo. Although I think season 1 and 2 are the best by far. Season 1's my favorite. Season 2 is my second favorite. Season 3 is my third favorite. Is that a decline? I think the first 3 were all good. The first 2 were great. Season 3 was it was fine. There were things I liked about it, things I didn't like about it. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's a babe, so I did like that. But season 5 is such a weird season. Because there are things I really I do like things about it. I like the casting choices. I think Juno Temple is doing a great job as Dorothy Lyon. I think that John Hamm is doing a great job as Sheriff Roy Tillman. And I think a lot of the supporting cast is also really good. I like the music choices. I like if you just take individual scenes, it's well acted. There are some tense moments. I still look forward to watching it every week. But every time I watch it, it bugs the crap out of me. It's not bad like Fear the Walking Dead bad. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just woke trash. Well, I hate that word. If you... Woke is like one of those words like interesting, which doesn't mean very much anymore. It's a lazy word. Stop using it. It's lazy. Sure, yeah, I know. Like... We've talked about woke on this channel a lot, right? And there is such thing, in my opinion, as people who are overly woke. What does that mean exactly? Well, really pushing an agenda. Usually, I think that the overly woke are usually, more interested in being offended than in any sort of coherent ideological platform. But you could describe people, the anti-woke, the same way. The very virulently anti-woke and the woke are like two sides of the same coin. So we won't really talk about this in terms of woke. Yeah, I can see where people are coming from. Okay. The bad guy is a cis white male and a Christian and a conservative. The good guys are all, it's women or, the black state trooper, etc., etc. But I don't think that that's a very interesting analysis of the problems with this show. Because who cares, honestly? White, sure. Anybody can be a villain. Anybody, women, men, white, black, whatever. I don't think that's a very compelling analysis. I think it's much, much more to the point. Like, this wouldn't be so much of a problem if the characters were more complex to begin with. But here's the problem with season 5 of Fargo. They're not. The characters are so shallow this season. And the story is so on the nose. And I've talked about this in different ways. I've talked about how, inserting a lot of modern day politics, Tillman using phrases like welfare queens, the inclusion of Trump, feels very on the nose. It feels too blunt. It's a blunt instrument when this show has, in the past at least, although outlandish and over the top, has been more nuanced and subtle in a lot of ways. Like, for instance, in season 1, Lester's character kills his wife. Roy Tillman in this season kills his wife, right? We know that's part of his backstory. He kills his wife. Lester also kills his wife. Both characters are presented as bad guys, but which character is more interesting? And, I use that word, but which character is more, complex, dynamic? Which character is given the treatment of a whole season of where we get to know and see what's going on inside this character's head and why he is the way he is? Well, that's Lester. Not Tillman. Tillman is a cartoon villain, a one-note cartoon villain. And don't get me wrong, John Hamm does a great job with this character. But he's just a bad guy. Like, whatever sort of, I keep wanting to say interesting and then I feel like a hypocrite, but whatever sort of character quirks or traits or things that made him unique in the outset of this season, he has lost by the end of it. He was just a one-note character. Lester, on the other hand, he kills his wife because she humiliates him. She emasculates him. She's constantly comparing him to his brother, and his brother is an asshole. She is telling him all the time that he's useless, that she should have married somebody else, that he doesn't, that he's not a man, that he can't even fix an appliance. She's awful. She's this is absolutely, in many ways, verbal abuse. And he is a sort of timid, nice guy, right? He finally breaks, and he kills her. And it's horrible. Obviously, that is not how you respond to being humiliated or emasculated by your wife. There is a thing called divorce, which they obviously should have gotten. But he snaps, this happens, and it leads to a series of other really bad things, right? And instead of doing the right thing at this point, Lester keeps digging the hole deeper and deeper. And he's the protagonist of the story, but also, he's not. Really, the cops are, right? But he is the central character of the story. And we get to see as his wicked choices, his selfish choices, the further he is led down the road of sin, or whatever you want to call it, the more you see that that's really his true nature, right? It's sort of a Breaking Bad story. It's been a long time since I've watched that season. I keep meaning to rewatch it, but there's so much to watch, and it's hard to keep up. Malvo in that, Billy Bob Thornton's character, is I guess you want to call the Fargo wild card, the Fargo, the demonic figure, right? We have a very different version of that in season 5 with Munch. Munch is by far, I think, the most Fargo character of season 5. But Malvo was that character in season 1, and he's sort of the trickster demon who sort of sets everything into motion, right? And in the movie, there was the Swede, who's kind of that character there. And each one's a little bit different, right? But they're this character who lives outside the law, outside of the society. Not just the law in terms of like what is legal and illegal, but outside of the norms of human society, outside of even, so Tillman in season 5, he has created his own little kingdom, right? He's a constitutional sheriff. His way is the law. He, is the king of his own little county, blah, blah, blah. But he still lives within a sort of normal, logical realm of reason, even though he's, hardcore biblical, whatever, and he's willing to kill willy-nilly, and he's a bad guy, and he doesn't obey the laws of the broader land, he still lives within that, whereas Munch clearly lives outside of that, in his own, almost his own spiritual realm. And that's Malvo in the first season in a lot of ways. He has no morals that bind him, no beliefs. He just sort of does what he wants and likes to stir up chaos. But with those two characters, and there being, we have the two police from different towns who are investigating all of this. But with those two characters, we have this long, in-depth examination of morality. And, with a character like Lester, we have a complicated character who, in a lot of ways, we empathize with in the beginning, and then see him sort of fall from grace over time. Whereas in season 5, to me at least, even though I have enjoyed like many elements of it, especially aesthetic elements, like how there's been Nightmare Before Christmas and Home Alone and some of these other elements from other films that they've brought in. It's not just there's a lot of nods to Fargo the film and whatnot, and the Fargoisms or whatever, but they've also brought in all this other stuff, and there's some really cool stuff. But what I can't stand about it is just how one-dimensional all these characters are. Dorothy Lyon is just a heroic figure. She's a victim who is tough and badass, a tiger, a lion, a bear, oh my, a lot of Wizard of Oz stuff in there too. But she is she's just good. She's just a good guy. You just root for her. And yeah, I know that this series has had good guys before. They're usually police, actually. And we have that also in Indira. She is a really good policewoman, and her husband is just absolutely terrible. There's no gray there at all. He is a piece of shit. he monologued her about wanting a wife after she does everything for him and he doesn't even have a job, and they're all in massive debt because of him. And then in this most recent episode, we find out he is in fact cheating, and she finally tells him off. But it's like, there's nothing complicated about this relationship. He is just bad and useless. She is just good, and it's sort of like this throughout the whole season. There are a couple of complicated characters. I'm not going to say that it's 100% this. Gator, Roy Tillman's son, Steve from Stranger Things. He is potentially the most interesting character in the whole season. I use that word again. I'm so sorry, but he is perhaps the most the one to watch, right? Because for one thing, Munch is after him, so he's screwed. But we see that he was raised in this abusive home and has, because we learned his mother we're not surprised by this, but his mother was killed by his father, and he has been raised by his father to become his father, who despises him. So he is now fighting this internal struggle between what he, I think, deep down knows is right, and he knows his father's a monster, and desperately wanting the approval of his father and to be like him. That's a great character there, right? You have complications and an internal struggle and all the rest. And I think out of all the characters in the entire show, Gator is probably the only one that is really, really complicated and leaves a big question mark. Although, because this season has been so predictable, I think it's fairly obvious that Gator will turn on his father in the end. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to happen. Maybe it has something to do with Munch. Munch is a sin eater. Maybe Munch eats his sin and opens his eyes somehow. I don't know. That's not as predictable, but I do think it's fairly obvious that he will turn on his father and will somehow help Dorothy, and she'll help him and whatever. Everybody else, though, yeah, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of complicated feelings and motivations in Lorraine Lyon, the mother-in-law of Dorothy, the CEO of this big debt collection agency. You know, she talks like she's very, very pompous. She's very, very sure of herself. She's very, very cold and callous. She has the big no sign behind her, which, by the way, if you twist it, says Oz. Another Wizard of Oz reference. She is in many ways a one-note character, but we've seen that she has this empathy for her daughter-in-law, who she doesn't really like, but who, she wants strong women, and she hates to see this really horrific abuse that she suffered. So I think, again, it's fairly obvious that she's working against Roy Tillman, not just because she doesn't like him or whatever, but because she does care about her daughter-in-law. A reader, a viewer, whatever, a detractor wrote this. I couldn't disagree with you more. This is about my last post about too many modern day politics being pushed into the show. I love this season, and clearly you don't realize this year in politics is very important. I'm sorry, but I don't want my TV shows to focus on this year in politics. That's not what a TV show is for. That's what the news is for. That's what op-eds in, Mother Jones and the National Republic are for. The writers are just describing conservative middle America sheriffs. If one lives in a conservative part of America, one sees Trumpism daily. Yes, one sees Trumpism daily, but let's unpack that a little bit. Is this person saying that conservative middle America sheriffs are all violent wife beaters and murderers who all happen to lord over their counties like this? I fully believe that a lot of middle America conservative sheriffs are Trump supporters, but I have a very hard time believing that many of them at all are like Roy Tillman level, running little, basically gangs in rural gangs where women are killed and dumped in the earth. I'm sure that shit happens, but I don't think it's common. Now, if this show is simply letting us know that conservative sheriffs in middle America are Trump supporters, well, I have to ask, what's interesting about that? I use that word again. But really, what does that tell us? What is that saying about America? What is that saying about society? If we want, in our TV shows, our movies, our books, our video, if we want to have a message, if we want to have a lesson, if we want to tell a story, if we're trying to convey some meaning, well, what is that here? What meaning is being conveyed? What are they shedding light on with this series that we don't know already? What have I learned about conservative Middle America sheriffs from Fargo season 5? First of all, I don't need or want or care to learn about that in this particular show. What I want is a character study about individuals, who are unique in this region that is unique. But even if this is their goal, what exactly have they taught us? What exactly have we learned? What are they saying that we haven't heard a million times before in blog posts or whatever else? Is Fargo the vehicle for dissecting Middle America conservative sheriffs and Trumpism? I don't think so, and I don't even think that's the point of this season anyways, right? Which I'm not really sure what the point of this season is, although it seems to be more and more and more about domestic violence, which again isn't a very compelling subject for Fargo, because Fargo has always been a lot more complicated than just a wife beater and murderer. Right? Now, Fargo has dealt, as I mentioned with season 1, but also the original movie, it has dealt with husbands really failing their wives. Absolutely. That is right from the beginning, right from the first ever Fargo, the film itself from the Coen brothers, we have a story of a husband who gets in a lot of trouble and gets his wife in a lot of trouble because of his shortcomings. But his shortcomings aren't necessarily because he's a cartoon villain who just beats women and quotes Bible verses while he whips them with chains. Cartoon villain. It's because it's because of cowardice. It's because of passivity. It's because of emasculation. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that those characters do bad things, but they're reasons that you can relate to, people can relate to. They're because of weakness. Right? Whereas Roy Tillman just feels like it's just a stereotype. He just feels like a stereotype. And I think that's the problem I have with this season. You have the noble Dorothy Lyon, who is just strong and brave and a victim and can fight off grown men and is very clever and is always noble and pure and just good. And you have the big, bad, stereotypical, Trumpy, conservative sheriff. And again, I've had lots of people say to me after I've made these videos and written these posts, oh, you're just a Trump supporter. I fucking hate Donald Trump. I despise everything about him and everything he stands for. I won't go into details, but I think his presidency was one of the worst. I mean, I fucking hate most politicians, for one thing. And I've never been a fan of any president. I think most powerful and rich people are corrupt and not to be trusted. If you want to get into my politics, you won't find a shred of love for Trump, but you probably won't find any for Biden either. And you won't find it for conservative Middle America sheriffs or most local Democratic politicians. If you want to get down to it. I don't dislike this season because of the politics. I dislike this season because of how they are conveyed, how they are pushed, how it becomes more about the politics than about the character study. And so we deal with characters who are flat and one-dimensional rather than characters like Lester who are deep and rich and weak and dangerous because of their weakness. And yeah, there were some great lines. I love the line that Lorraine says when she's like, so you want... he's talking about being a libertarian or whatever. And she says, there's only one person who can have no accountability and no consequences. I don't remember. I'm paraphrasing. And she says, that's a baby. That was a great, how they said it, not how I just said it, but that was a great line. And there are moments like that throughout the season where you're like, this is great. This is surprising. This is interesting. I said it again. But overall, it just feels like a well-produced, well-acted cartoon full of one-dimensional characters who are not particularly compelling, who are not given a very deep or satisfying examination as characters, whose flaws are either so abundant or so non-existent that we're just dealing in absolutes, you know? Anyways, I don't hate it. Don't get me wrong. I think that when I really like something, I'm much harsher when I criticize it. Like season 8 of Game of Thrones. I loved Game of Thrones. I'm rewatching Game of Thrones with my daughter right now, who is named Arya, by the way, after Arya Stark. And when she was born, there were only 4 books out, I think. The series hadn't even begun. And I love that show. I love those books, and I am an extremely harsh critic of where everything went there because I love them so much. And Fargo, I have had so much admiration for until season 4, and I had real high hopes for season 5, which I thought started out quite good, and then has sort of devolved into this mess. I just finished recording this whole video, and I forgot to mention in this latest episode, one of the things I wanted to point out was that not only are characters sort of one-dimensional, but also they do stupid things. So, The lawyer, Danish Graves, is warned by the state trooper, Wyatt Farr, I can't remember his name. He is warned that Tillman has taken Dorothy from the hospital, and that they need to do something about it fast, quick, get her, because he doesn't know how long she has, which is pretty much saying they're going to kill her, dude. Well, Graves is a master schemer, and he's done this kind of hilarious thing to undermine Tillman by getting 3 guys to join the sheriff race and all dress like him and change their name to him and echo him at the debate and all this stuff. And it's, that's kind of a funny Fargo-y plan. But then when he's warned, he goes to Tillman's ranch by himself. He doesn't call Lorraine, his boss. He doesn't tell anybody where he's going. Even when he arrives, he gets a phone call, doesn't answer it. Then he goes in, talks to Tillman, basically says, hey, I was the one who screwed you over at this debate and humiliated you and probably ruined your chances of becoming a sheriff. We backed you into this corner, and now here's a deal. If you let Dorothy go, we'll win the election for you. And then he gets killed. And Tillman says, if you're so smart, and then he shoots him in the stomach, why are you so dead? And then he shoots him in the face. And that was a good line. I'm going to give it to the show right there. That was a great scene all around, except for the fact that Graves is the only reason they get to that scene in the first place is Graves makes a really, really, really stupid decision. And what? Why are so many writers these days, why do they take such horrible shortcuts to get to where they want to be? You take a guy who's clearly smart, who's clearly experienced, who's had all this experience defeating his opponents, and then you put him in the most ridiculously stupid situation. And yeah, you could say, well, he would never think that the sheriff would kill him. Yeah, maybe, but also he knows the sheriff has kidnapped a woman and might kill her. And now he's going to go put himself in that situation with, he also knows that this guy sent kidnappers and killers and all, he knows a lot about how dangerous this man is. But he just goes to his compound without telling anybody, totally vulnerable, and is so surprised when he is killed. And I just feel like this is, again, the show making characters do stupid things to move the plot along. And that just bugs me. So anyways, that's it. That's all I have to say. Little addendum there. Thank you. Peace.